We are live. Welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled Digital Safety and Literacy, Empowering Parents and Ensuring Safe Online Experience for Teens. This webinar is part of a series of webinars and conferences we are organizing at Think Young, supported by Meta, who brings together a network of young people, academic, expert, politician across Europe to bring a fresh, honest, and unique perspective about our online experiences. And it is through webinar like this, but also in-person events that we're trying to, level up the debate and ensure we spread knowledge to inform and mobilize young people, but not just young people, in this case also parents, to make sure that young people can have not just a safe experience online, but also an empowering one. We are living in an increasing digital world, and ensuring safety and fostering the literacy of teenagers in their online endeavors has become a huge concern for families. This exploration delves into effective strategies and consideration for parents, aiming to enhance their children's digital experience and the teenager as well digital experience. Today we do have a nice group of speakers, very high level, coming from a diverse group of background. We have with us Professor Esther Rosendahl, who is the full professor of digital resilience at the Erasmus School of Social and Behavioral Science. We have Arja Krauchenberg, who is a project manager at the European Parent Association, but she also vice president of a lifelong learning platform, which is a wonderful platform. I invite everyone to check what they're doing. Lifelong learning, it's super important for anyone at any age. We have Chiara Maiorino, who's an influencer and a young activist. We have Brando Benifei, who just joined us, a member of the European Parliament, and Dave Miles from Meta, who's director of safety policy for Meta EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. To everyone watching, and this would be my last point, and then I pass the word to the speakers. To everyone watching, please remember you can ask any question you want on the platform you are looking at us, and you can post your question, and then the question will be asked towards the end of the webinar. So if there is something that comes to your mind, if there is any curiosity you might want to satisfy from the speaker, please write your question there, and then our team will put your question forward. I would start with Esther, so an academic. You basically spent most of your life studying, digital behavior and behavioral people online. So I think you're definitely well placed to put a bit of light on a very complex aspect, which is digital safety, and how should parents behave, and also what they should prioritize. As a parent myself, the problem today is that you get 700 million different information, and you never know what is the priority, what you should focus on. So could you please help us a bit understanding what would be the priority for parents for their teenager online and the experience of their teenager online?
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea, for this question. So indeed, it's very challenging to guide your children in this digital era and make them actually also thrive in the online world. So what I learn from parents is that actually they find it pretty hard to stay up to date, to have all the knowledge they believe they need to pass on to their children. In order to make them aware of all the various risks that are out there, but actually also to help and guide them grasp all the opportunities the online world also has to offer. And what you then also see that in media education, also from the sides of parents, the focus is pretty much on increasing the awareness, transferring knowledge to them, the skills that they would need to act in a digitally resilient way. From the academic research that has been done in this field, we know that having knowledge, having skills, being aware of all the risks is very important. But what we also know is that many children and also teens actually already do have quite a lot of knowledge, and also oftentimes even more knowledge on how the online world functions than their parents. But what is overlooked is that there is actually another skill that is very, very important to stimulate, and that is the skill of self-regulation, the ability to stop and think. Because oftentimes the children do have all the knowledge, but they're actually not able to translate that into resilient actions online. And that is because they lack self-regulation, specifically in an online world where there's, which is actually designed to trigger emotional responses and automatic responses, and not so much critical reflection. So if I would advise parents, I would say, well, of course, focusing on awareness and knowledge is important, but what's even more important is to stimulate self-regulatory skills of children, helping them stop and think while using media, because that creates some mental space in which they are better able to activate all the knowledge they do have, and turn it into certain strategies that can be helpful for them to defend against risks and help to grasp all the opportunities.
Thank you very much, Esther. And I mean, you definitely went straight to a very important point, the self-regulation and making them resilient. I like to pass the word to Brando, who's now working at the European Parliament since several years, despite a very young age. And I think you bring a very nice perspective. You're a young person, so you're naturally very active on your social media. You know what we're talking about, which sometimes is not the case for many politicians. But at the same time, you work in an environment where, it is important for the European Parliament to look at what's happening. And if you, for one of you knows you, they know, what the European Parliament is doing, but there are many people in Europe who are not aware of what's going on at the European Parliament and how European policymakers are actually collaborating to create guidelines for European citizen and member state to ensure a digital, safe and empowering online experience. Can you tell us a bit about what's going on at the European Parliament?
Yes, Andrea, thank you very much. And thanks to the other speakers. I want to, first of all, underline the continuing effort of Think Young on these topics. We have been cooperating on this specific issue of the digital literacy and digital consciousness for all people, and also now we are focusing on the impact on families, on parents, on children, and this is not an obvious thing, because we see attention on this topic when there is something happening. Then we see this not being anymore in the headlines. While I think a continuing effort is crucial by cooperating between different institutions and civil society. So I want, first of all, to thank Think Young for this effort, cooperating with different partners in time. Now there is Meta that is part of this debate, but also other companies and organizations also in the public sphere have been working together with us on this topic. Also directly with the European Parliament, we had the chance to exchange views and also take decisions in these years. Myself, I am in the European Parliament already almost 10 years, and I've been seeing a growing attention and a growing effort that led us to take some important decisions. I can mention the Digital Services Act, but also I should mention my own effort as rapporteur of the Artificial Intelligence Act to deliver, for example, on one important achievement in my view, on which I had the chance also to discuss, in fact, with Meta and other important developers. That is the transparency issue of AI-generated content. This is a big challenge, not so easy technically, but a challenge that everyone is taking to give more transparency to our users on what is AI-generated content and what is not, because this influences a lot what is perceived as reality, as truth, and what is in fact not true and can be used as disinformation instrument. For example, the use of deepfakes, which can be also used for bullying and for threatening young people. And this must be said clearly. It's not just about
Brando, I think we can't hear you properly anymore. I don't know if you have a speaker. Yeah. Brando, we have an issue. Try to speak again.
Yes, I think now it's okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know. It was a technical problem. So I was saying that the issue of the deep fakes, for example, which might be looked into from a politician perspective, these instruments of disinformation can be used against an elected person to show this person saying and doing things he hasn't done, but also it can be used for bullying. It can be used to threaten young people, to use it against the mental health of young or vulnerable users. So it's an important topic to tackle, the transparency on AI-generated content. This is something we worked on effectively, and we know that this can be a very important turning point. But also, I mentioned the Digital Services Act, which is already operative, which is also protecting with the cooperation with the social networks, with the platforms, young users and their families from illegal content, from disinformation, from hate speech, etc. I think this is very important that we continue working in this sense. But also we need to build more education. I mentioned some legislative actions, some norms, but we also need to work in education, because you can have all the rules you want, but if people are not educated to be able to use consciously these instruments, we will not reach our objectives. So investment in learning, in also the role of the families, and also the empowerment of young people so that they can be able to take the right decisions. So I think we have a lot of different dimensions to work on. I think we can and we must do more. But I also think that Europe is to some extent paving the way. I see it by the discussions with the legislators from other parts of the world, US, South America, Africa. We see that there is a lot of attention on what we are doing in this field, and I think we can do more by working together. So I'm sorry I cannot stay because of a problem with a concurrent commitment, but I hope I gave you some useful inputs, and I'm always available for further exchange and discussion, also with the audience that is listening. I'm easily reachable, and I will be happy to continue this long time work together with Think Young, which again I praise for the continuing effort on this topic of digital literacy and digital consciousness in front of the many changes that we are experiencing in the digital sphere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brando. And it was very comprehensive and a bit longer, but you covered all the topics. So thanks a lot for taking the time. And one of the things you clearly mentioned, it's the education part, and education is clearly done within schools, done within any kind of activities that young people get involved outside of their house. But it's also important what they get at home from their parents. And Arya, I'll move on to you. You are project coordinator at the European Parents Association, so definitely an important point of view on this one. What strategies do you think that parents can can put in place to enhance the teenager digital safety while they are, using the internet, and they use the internet for basically everything today, and it's a wonderful tool. But what would be your advice to parents in this case?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me to this panel discussion and to represent the voice of parents here. Allow me just briefly to say who we are, as many people out there might not be aware that there are not only parent associations at school, but also on national and on European level. So the European Parents Association is an umbrella organization for around 30 national and regional parents associations or federations of parents associations, and has basically two main objectives. One is to connect our members and foster exchange of good practices and opportunities to influence policy on different levels, but also to share challenges. And the second objective is to represent parents on the European level. So we do work with the European Parliament, not only with Brando, but also with other MEPs. We hold very often our final conferences of projects in the European Parliament. We work with the Council of Europe and, of course, with the European Commission and diverse Directorate Generals, of course, mostly with DG EAC, that is responsible for education and culture, but also with others, with DG Connect, for instance, when it comes to the digital sphere. Secondly, let me say that I'm very pleased that today we speak of teens. And in this, we make it very clear that online experiences are not really suitable, and also in many cases forbidden by law for children beneath the age of 13, which is something that is often forgotten in the discussion, but it's an essential point. As younger children, and I think Esther mentioned that already, haven't got yet the possibility for the self-regulation because certain physical developments have not taken place yet. Yeah? The brain of a young child continues to develop. I mean, actually, it continues to develop until the age of approximately 25. But there are parts that are really not ready yet for these kind of online experiences before they become teens. So when talking about strategies to keep teens safe online, this actually means that the period before children have access to the internet is crucial, because ideally they should be equipped with the necessary competencies, which for us are skills, knowledge, attitudes, and values before they are exposed to the World Wide Net for the first time. It's a bit like learning how to ride a bike. You wouldn't just give them a bicycle and say, go off and explore the world, without teaching them, A, how to practically use the bike, including how to operate the brakes and how to stop and get on and get off. B, the traffic rules and regulations and how to respect them. And C, certain safety measures like wearing a helmet, for instance, keeping to the bicycle lane and not going on the highway, and not going too fast, and other things. Parents do understand that when it comes to bicycles, but they often don't know how to go about this regarding the internet. This is where organizations like ours come in for training and counseling, and I think we'll get back to that a little bit later. So the first and foremost strategy that we recommend, and that needs to be built from the early years, is to build a relation of trust with their children, based on positive communication, and to maintain that also through difficult times like adolescence. There's a wonderful book in German that is called Puberty is When Parents Become Difficult. And I think that sums up very nicely the challenge. But it's the parents' role to continue to hang in there and to find ways to reach out and continue to show interest in what young people are doing and accompany their children on their way to adulthood, also in the digital space, and to teach them things like empathy and respect and well behavior already well before they go out into the World Wide Web.
Thank you very much, Arya. That was very clear and very curious also to hear the follow-up. we move on now to Chiara. Chiara, I think you have a very interesting point of view. You are advocating for responsible digital behavior, which is something that usually comes from people that are considerably older than you, and as a consequence, not much listened by teenager, which is, I guess, natural. We've all been teenagers, and it's very much part of that generation. They don't listen, but clearly they look at role models. They look at and one of of the role models they have today, it's influencers like you. So your voice is very much heard by teenager. Can you tell us a bit about your role and what exactly do you do when you do this kind of advocacy, to really make sure that young people have a bit of a responsible behavior online, and what is also the response you get from your followers and from your crowd?
Yes, thank you very much for having me, first of all. And I'm just going to explain briefly what I do. I built a online community briefly like 2.5 years ago. It's called Denk mal laut in German, which is like thinking out loud in English. And I speak about mostly the topics of mental health and empowerment. And with these come also things like how to move around online. I have a background in psychology and I specialized in media psychology. So I'm very interested in this topic. And since I'm pretty much in the field of social media for the last 10 years in different roles, kind of, I have really seen how the platforms emerged and everything that has been happening in the last years, as a user, but also as a person creating content. And I have been in the field of I would say a fashion lifestyle influencer before. And then I thought, okay, I want to do something different. I want people online to have a different experience, and we need some accounts that do something in the field of mental health, empowerment, putting empowering things out in the world. So I started by doing writing little reminders actually to myself, and I put them out there. And very quickly a community built up of people that feel empowered by these messages, which is great. And also I use this as a tool or as a channel to promote how to move around online. And some people say, hey, but you are online, you are telling people how to, aren't you part of the problem? But I choose to be in this space where I can actually reach these people that are online and reach young people that are using social media. So I try to put out also reminders on how to use social media, on what are my tools, how I use it, always to be careful what kind of accounts you follow. Also, what Esther said, to reflect on the content, because I know from my perspective that when I was a fashion influencer, I would only show my nice outfits and my good days, and not when I was feeling down or when I did not like what I was doing that day. So I always try to encourage people to see, okay, not everything you see is how it actually is. And also with these editing apps and AI that came up, or that is becoming very big now, we have to be even more careful. And I really want people to reflect on what they're seeing online and what it does to their mental health, because some things are more obvious and some are more unconscious also for our mental health, could be damaging for our mental health if we always use comparison, because this happens very slowly and sometimes can have a very big impact on our mental health. So yes, that's what I'm doing in my community. And also on the other hand, yes,
what is the response you get from your community?
People tell me, Chiara, I'm careful about what I'm consuming online, but I go on social media to go and see your content because it really empowers me. It makes me feel good. I've also now I I published a book with my texts and poems. It also has a one topic about social media where I think critically about it, where I think what's good, what's not so great, because after all, it's my job and it built this community. And I meet these people, for example, a few weeks back, I made like an event and I met some people in real life. And then, for example, a girl came up to me, or a woman came up to me, and she said, well, actually, I deleted my account, but I'm still here because I feel like it's not good for me. But I'm here and I read your book. And she was a teacher, and she said she reads to her pupils in school. And that was like a moment for me where it was like, okay, people like, they are actually taking serious what I'm saying. They deleted their account, but they are still here, which is great. But yes, I feel like people really are thinking about how they consume content and how they use their online experiences much more than, I don't know, 10 years back when it all started.
Thank you. Dave, if I can pass on to you. First of all, we're very grateful that you are here. You know, it's not very common that usually big corporation put a face when it comes to this kind of topic. So thank you very much for this. And obviously, you know, there's many things we can talk about and we can ask, but I'm always a bit curious about what are the key challenges that you guys are going through. I mean, you do have a community which I suppose, it's well beyond 2 billion people. So the challenges are vast. When it comes to teenager as well, and you know, it also comes with a big responsibility as well. Which are the challenges that you see and that you're facing with teens these days?
Sure. Okay, that's a great opening question, and thank you. And firstly, thank you to Think Young for inviting me to participate in the webinar today, and the wonderful speakers. I've already enjoyed some of the initial contributions. It's been fantastic. I think the first thing to say is clearly that we have a range of apps. So Facebook, Instagram from last week, Threads in Europe, WhatsApp, and increasingly in the metaverse. So clearly we see young people and their safety as a really important dimension. If people feel safe on our platform, then they'll use the platform and they'll connect in the way that Chiara will. And we see amazing examples of young people connecting, inspiring each other, working together. And that's really important in terms of connecting young people. I think we have sort of 3 principles overall that we really try and follow in terms of the way that we work with products and with young people. The first is sort of responsible empowerment. The second is putting in the right age-appropriate safeguards. And the third is innovation. And you have to be at least 13 years of age to use Facebook or Instagram. And we're really keen to make sure that developmentally young people are ready for the platform they use. We put young people into privacy by default from the outset on Instagram and Facebook. And we've indeed introduced a range of parental supervision tools which allow a parent in those early stages to opt in, and for the child to opt in to a supervision tool that helps them manage their time, check their contacts, and just ensure that there's a good teachable moment between parent and child. So we think that's really important. And I often say a digital generation is probably no more than 2 or 3 years. A 12-year-old will use it very differently to a 15-year-old, and a 15-year-old different to an 18-year-old. So it's really important that we deliver age-appropriate safeguards. I think the other thing that we've learned over the last 2.5, 3 years, and we've implemented more than 30 safety, privacy, and well-being tools like quiet mode and take a break, things that give young people the control to manage their environment. And what I think we've really learned from that is that young people take those tools up very quickly. And when I speak to young people, they feel very empowered by that. I think the other thing that's often overlooked, and I think industry can do a better job of, and we've tried to pioneer through our design jams, we've done some recently in Brussels and Germany with Think Young, and we do them around the world, is to get young people to participate in the design and co-design of products and services and apps. Young people really do understand how these technologies work. It's easy for companies like us to make assumptions about what they want, what they consider to be privacy like, and privacy is a fast evolving concept for many young people. So involving young people in that co-design process is really important. It helps inform our thinking, and we've really got to listen to young people, because in the end, it's not just their safety, not just their privacy, but also they're often connecting around well-being issues, and it's an important empowering tool in that kind of area. And I think the final thing to say as well is that because we're a global company with more than 3 billion users, is that young people use different apps in different ways. And it's really important to make sure that as an industry, we collaborate to make sure that it's not just the larger platforms that are within scope in terms of the standards for safety and privacy, but other platforms too. And so we're very keen to collaborate not only with other industry players, but with experts and academics to make sure that we get the balance right.
Thank you very much, Dave. And you touched about several very important points, and very, very happy that the co-design is definitely something where we have seen it building up. And there is, I think, the fantastic thing about this generation and the young one more and more is that they like to be involved. It's clear, and it's clear about what's going on social media, and they really like to participate. And definitely the co-creation is something we saw it. They like to come out and come forward. But you also mentioned, the 3 billion user and the large impact on society. And I want to move over to Esther on this one. I mean, you've done a lot of studies, and I would stay here and speak with you for hours on what you're doing. And obviously there is an important role parents can have, as Arya was saying, and also influencer can have, as Chiara was saying, but it's also, there is an important role that society can have in trying to ensure the safety of teens online, no? And what have you seen in your work that works well, and what are the, I call it strategies. I don't know if it's a strategies of simple behaviors that people can have, and trying to make sure we take it as a society.
Yeah. Well, in this way, you can see society as the context, right, in which the children grow up, in which teens grow up, and parents are also part of society. But it's also they're also embedded in schools. They're embedded in peer groups. They're embedded in neighborhoods, and they're embedded in countries, in cultures, and that all has an influence on how teenagers behave online. So what makes it very complicated is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach here. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. And I think that's also, for organizations like Meta, one of the challenges, right? So you cannot address all, the 3 billion people in the same way. So I think here for society, it's very important to understand what is the role of these contextual influences. So, for example, I live in the city of Rotterdam. It's a super diverse city in the Netherlands with a lot of different cultures, different backgrounds. And what we see if we do the research here in our neighborhoods is that in each neighborhood, the teens and the parents experience different challenges when it comes to the online world, but at the same time there can also be like similar challenges. But like we as adults seem to talk about an online and an offline world, for them it's all the same, it's hybrid, it's fluid. So as a society, we should be aware of that as well. So the things that happen online, also when it comes to well-being, so I think Chiara knows a lot about this, it's oftentimes interconnected to well-being, in, for us, the offline world. And one of the things that was already mentioned that I feel is very, very important for society to take care of, and for all these actors, so for parents, for schools, for teachers, for organizations, is to incorporate the view of the young people. So we tend to talk about them and not, with them. And it seems to be very, very difficult. So I applaud the co-design efforts that you already made, but it seems to be very hard to actually listen to them and to understand their needs, So I think therefore also Chiara is so effective, because she's rather close to them. You seem to be able to really address their viewpoints and their needs. And for parents, that's very difficult, also for teachers. So I once spoke to one of the teachers in the school here in Rotterdam, and she said, well, they seem to be rather tired of the conversation about media, mainly from a risk perspective, right? So that's what we as adults seem to do. We approach the whole topic from a risk perspective. We only start talking to them if there was a certain risk. And then when we discussed this a bit further, we came to the conclusion they are not tired of having the conversation. They are tired of the way we have the conversation with them. They are, well, they also see the positive sides of it. So we should not forget all the opportunities of the online world, and what's the importance of that to them. So listening, building indeed trust, very important. Being non-judgmental, providing emotional support. Just listen. Ask questions and listen. We actually do not have to teach them that much. We just have to listen and ask them, what do you feel that like a solution here? What do you need? They're perfectly able to tell us what they need if they have this trustworthy, trustful and warm relationship. Could be with a parent, but it could also be with one of the other actors within society. It could be a youth worker. It could be, the neighbor. It's just that they feel that they are taken seriously, that they feel that they can make mistakes, that it's fine to make a mistake, that they can actually build resilience through making mistakes, but that there's a helpline. So I think that's where society comes in.
Thank you very much. I think you really put down many interesting and important points, and I think it connects well with what Arja was saying before. And I'm moving on to you. That you say make sure they trust you somehow, no? And as a parent, yes, but it's true that it's also sometimes with your parents you don't feel so comfortable talking about certain topic. That there is a society or a network around you that you can feel comfortable. But Arja, it's true that also. Again, if we look back at the parents, there are many things they can do to ensure that the teenagers feel safe and empowered online, which you started mentioning before, and probably you wanna continue build on. But also, I think adding the perspective that not all the parents have access to the all education. Not all the parents have access to. A webinar like this or any other online tool or even the technology itself, sometimes, the infrastructure, not just the knowledge. So there are many different levels, again, also of situation in which parents find themselves. And maybe sometimes they might feel, lost. And I think it would be very important to hear from you what would be your advice and what you think we should put in place to make sure that also the parents are empowered when it comes to the education of our teenager.
Yes, well, thank you very much. And I think what Esther said before, there's no one size fits all. And that's a problem that we are facing also with parents, that we cannot put up a course that we do and everybody takes it and then everybody knows how to do this. Yeah, so that doesn't work. Yeah, because of all the reasons that you have already given. So what we do is we believe a lot in cooperation. And so one of our cooperation partners, if you like, is the Council of Europe. And the Council of Europe has developed a series of leaflets for parents, also a series of teachers, by the way, and some really nice videos for children to help them develop healthy practices once they are going online. But of course, yeah, as you mentioned, not everybody has access to digital devices. Now, we have a project that's called Hermes, where we actually work with 2 universities that have developed great tools how you can learn computational thinking, problem solving, and all the other necessary competencies, even without digital devices, because that's something that's very often overlooked, that you can do pattern recognition, all these kind of things also without digital devices in the beginning, in order to be then better prepared to enter the online world, because you have a lot more idea of what is actually happening behind the device. But this is also something we are advocating for in order to avoid a bit the disparities in access. Because if children only get their first mobile phone or tablet or notebook at the age of 12, 13, especially for tablets and notebooks, that could be really at school. And that could be done by governments, and we could make sure that everybody has this access. Of course, that presupposes that also schools have access to the internet, which is increasing, especially after the pandemic, but which was not the case before. And then, of course, we talk about media education, as Esther also mentioned. We need the necessary instruction, not only on how to use the device technically, but also how to use it in an age-appropriate way, showing them the opportunities, how to access those, and also to make them aware of the pitfalls. Yeah? And evidently, this has to be done in cooperation with the parents, because if there is a totally different film, as I always call it, at home than there is at school, this might be extremely confusing for children, yeah? And also lead to issues, behavioral problems, because then they don't really know how to go about it and what is a good way and what is not a good way, if there's a lot of discrepancy between what they see in school or in the outside world and what is happening at home. Yeah. So it is really about cooperation of all stakeholders, a close relationship between parents and teachers, between home and school, so that both sides kind of pull into the same direction. Yeah. And as you said, in many cases, adults still need to get training themselves, the teachers as well as the parents, because they don't really know how to go about this. But that can also be used as an opportunity for building that relationship if we do trainings together for people at school, for example, yeah, on issues as privacy, cybersecurity, grooming and sexting, and all the dangers that are there, but also to show parents what are the opportunities and how to make the most of them. Yeah, very often teachers know that a little bit about in their own subject, but they don't know how to do that in general. And I think that could be a great opportunity to make people work together. And it's specifically important for the group of children or teens that we call from a disadvantaged background. Yeah. They need to be given the adequate resources to cater for their own and their parents' needs. That includes things like providing translation for parents from a migration background in such meetings, or even very, not digital related things like babysitting service for younger siblings during such meetings, but also someone to help them to follow up with technical issues that they might come up when children have the device. Yeah? And what is very clear is that all parents need support, because nobody can go back and ask the generation before, as you might do for the bicycle example that I mentioned before, or sleep issues or eating disorders. Yeah. On top of that, we had a wonderful webinar in one of our projects that was called Media Literacy for Parents, and Sonia Livingston came to give a talk, and she said, well, and on top of that, media literacy is a moving target. And we can see that very clearly, because we started out back in 2014 with a manifesto on internet and online behavior. And then we entered into a first project that was called Parent Nets. And now we are into our fourth project, actually, dealing with digitalization. And we have come from talking about things like what is an online game to AI. Yeah, so it's a really fast development, and that's why it's also so crucial that children get these so-called transversal skills very early on: critical thinking, problem solving, empathy, that can be developed without digital devices in the beginning, and then slowly incorporated in their dealing with those devices. And
thank you very much.
One last
please,
thing: digital devices does not necessarily mean automatically access to the internet. That's also something that people very often overlook. But when my son is 35 now, yeah. When my son got his first computer, that computer had no access to the internet, and he was doing all sorts of things with the digital device. Yeah, but it was a long time before he actually, for the first time, had unlimited access to the online world.
Thank you, Dave. Just to close a bit this part on the focus on parents, and then again, let me remind to everyone watching that you can post your question. I see already some coming, and then we will pose them to the speakers. But from a meta perspective, what roles parents should have in on the education of how teenagers use social media platform and what do you think they could do, and what would be their role, and what do you think from your point of view should be their approach to this?
Yeah, I think parents and guardians have a sort of pivotal role to play in children's digital lives, I think what I'd be advocating for really is as early a conversation as possible with young people, definitely pre-teen. Young people come of age online in one form or another very, very early these days. I think schools have an important role to play in that. But I think there's no question that the sooner that conversation's had, the better. I think the other thing too is that, and Esther touched on this, is the concept of digital resilience. I was talking to some young people the other day, and they were given a document which talked about digital citizenship, and they actually thought that was quite patronizing. That we were telling them how to be digital citizens, and it was a really an important reality check for me that young people have a very balanced perspective, and actually, if we keep talking like that, then they're going to find us difficult to relate to. It touched on some of the earlier remarks. I think it's really important to talk on the level with young people, talk to them about what they enjoy using, and not come, as Esther said earlier on, from a purely risk-based perspective. But building that resilience is important. I think two other things I would say is that we put a lot of effort here in Europe and in other parts of the world in developing huge language sets, and actually artificial intelligence will help us in this area. But we deployed a Get Digital, which is a media literacy program throughout Eastern Europe. And much to our surprise, there were almost no local language versions available when we first implemented those 3 or 4 years ago. And it was the take-up was incredible because there was very little resources at a local language level. So language is a really important aspect in terms of breaking barriers down. And then the other thing I would touch on too is an awful lot of communities in Europe and family structures are not two-parent families. They're often extended families or extended communities. So we do a lot of work with groups and communities, and I know creators do as well, because that sort of nuclear two-parent family concept is really not always appropriate. And I think it's really important that we factor in that language aspect and the fact that family structures and parenting is changing too. I think those are just the key points I would make. The final thing I would say is we're really keen to make sure that parents and children have as many tools as possible to do what they need to do. It's not for Meta to decide what the values are of that family, and they can range from their faith all the way through to their value systems. It's really important that they decide what that is, but we need to give them the tools so that they do that responsibly.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's definitely a very important point also, because I think what, Esther, Aria, everybody was saying is that it's really, different communities, different neighborhoods, and different set of values as well. I'd like to open to a couple of questions from our followers or people who are watching this, and then we go back. We have a question coming from Facebook, Petra, a question to the young people, so represented by Chiara. How do they relate to parents and guardian worries about their experience? Are you, Chiara, I would say, aware of what are the worries of your parents, and do you think they're justified? And I think, Chiara, just speak as you feel, and as you were a teenager, so few not too long ago, but what is your how did you see your parents, or when you were approaching social media?
Well, I'm thinking when I started, there was no Instagram yet. When I was like using it myself, when I was not being a creator, but using it myself. And I thought about it earlier also, how my parents like approached this. It was also about risks, but I remember my dad, for example, he went into a chat room with me because that was time of like chat rooms and stuff, ICQ, things like that. And we were like with a friend of mine, he was like, okay, let's go into this chat room. Also not being too much about the concerns, but he was like, okay, you guys want to go, let's go together. So we were logging into the computer, and we were chatting with, that was the time where you were actually chatting with people that you did not know also. And he was like, okay, like this is okay, this might not be okay. So I think about this sometimes, and I thought it was a good idea of him to do that, because he was also like, he really took us and went with us into this chat room, knowing that we wanted to do it and that it's fun for us, but also in a safe space where I would think about it later, and maybe also, would be open with a conversation with him, because he knew what was going on there. First of all, this was like, he learned what was going on there because he went with us into this chat room. And on the other hand, he let us know that if we have a problem or something's going on, we could always address him. So I think this was a good idea of him doing that. And on the other hand, maybe this is also something that parents could do. I don't know, log with their teens into their, like, go together over some content online, show them, like, make the children show them some things they are seeing and speaking about it, reflecting, looking at an image, being like, okay, do you think this is a real image? Do you think this is maybe altered? What do you feel when you see this? I think, like all of the experts mentioned, it's important that, we have an open conversation, and parents have an open conversation with their children about this, and just create a safe space in general where children or teenagers come to them, but also making them have their own experiences, I think, is also important. Not always sitting there and being like, okay, show me what you're doing. I want to see what you are doing, because then I think this can backfire if there's too much control.
Thank you very much. That was very hands-on, I think, of your father, but also I think very, very well explained by you. If I'm talking to my team who's in the background of this, and obviously I'm always very thankful because we are enjoying this wonderful webinar, but there are people in behind. If we can have, we have a question that comes from Carla, that's from LinkedIn. How can parents and guardians have an active role without disturbing the privacy of their teens? So that's a $1 million question. I don't know if Esther or Ariel, you probably, one of the two of you is probably best placed to answer this one. How can it be an active role without disturbing the privacy? Especially in today's world where every teenager have at least one device in their pocket.
Maybe I can start. I mean, I think what Chiara just mentioned, to accompany children on their way, especially in the beginning. A lot of things can be done as they would be done in the analog world. People very often forget that. And what was mentioned before, that for young people, the analog and the digital world, they are just one. They don't make that distinction. Then I think it's a good idea to actually apply the things that we were taught ourselves and that we have tried to teach our children in the analog world, about respecting people, about being polite, how you behave. I think there's not a big difference. Yeah. I mean, I remember my grandmother saying to me, don't treat other people in a different way than you want to be treated yourself. Yeah. I think that's valid everywhere. Yeah. And I think if that's a good starting point, then you also, as I said, you have to create this trusted relationship and the communication, and you have to keep on this positive communication, not by inquisiting on your children, what are you doing all the time, but to make them feel that you're there for them if anything happens, and that they can trust you, and that very important for teens is that they don't have to fear that you will take the device away if something happens, because that's a very, very, very often a reaction by parents. Well, this is too dangerous, we take the device. Well, then they will not talk to you. They will not tell you when something has happened. Yeah. And then you might find out when it's far too late. Yeah. So I think it's really this trusted relationship to say, okay, let's go and do this together. I'd like to know what you're doing. Tell me about it. And there are always moments where they talk about something, and then where you can pick up that thread and you can investigate a little more, and tell me about that new game. I have no clue how this is being played. And then they will tell you, because they want to share also. Yeah. Not at every age and not always, but there are moments where they want to share, and you have to be attentive to these moments and pick them up and make the most out of them. I think that's one of the most important things. And not intruding on your privacy. I mean, you can also make things very clear. I mean, there are laws and rules and regulations that need to be respected. This is something that very often parents don't want to tell their children. But I think it's a good point to say, well, if you do this, it's like if you go and steal a car and you're 14, I will be made responsible. I will go to prison. Yeah. So there are things that you cannot do because they are forbidden, and there's a reason behind that. And I think that's also something that children slowly but steadily need to learn. Yeah, like the rules of traffic. You cannot just do anything out there.
Thank you very much, Esther. Is there anything you want to integrate in this?
Yeah, well,
privacy. Active role without disturbing the privacy.
Yeah.
I think
I think it's very important for parents and all of us adults to know that actually privacy is an important child right. So it's very important to take that into account. And I think we can approach it in a similar way as, well, maybe privacy on Instagram or privacy on Facebook. So as a child, you need to be in control. And also parents, they should be transparent on their role. If you just install a certain app that tracks all the activity of the phone of a child, it wouldn't be fair if you just do it without the child knowing. So yeah, it's about being transparent, about the child being in control over, some of the actions that parents take to monitor the child's behavior. And I think a very important thing here is also that, it comes from the self-determination theory. It sounds a bit vague, but it's a very relevant one. So it says that humans have three basic needs: the feeling of autonomy, feeling of competence, and feeling of social connectedness. So in all our communication towards the child, I think it's important to address that. So a child needs a certain amount of autonomy, and parents can give that autonomy to the child by not controlling everything and not deciding everything for a child. And also the connectedness is then very important with this trust relationship and competence. Parents can have an active role, even by monitoring the children, if it's clear to them that it actually helps them building more competence in the online world. So you can take those three elements into account when deciding on this, I guess.
Thank you
Yeah, and
very
I think
much.
also parents are great role models. Yeah, and I think what we are trying to tell parents in our parents training is that they should be very aware what they do and how they do things, because children notice everything. Yeah, even if you think that a small child is not listening or is not looking, unconsciously they're very much aware of whether you are really talking to them or with them, not to them. It's also an issue that we have, taking them into account and taking their opinion into account, or whether you are distracted anyway and you're just saying anything. Yeah. So they notice, and they notice also whether you are constantly on your device. On the other hand, you tell the child not to be. So I think these things, you have to make that coherent. Otherwise, it's very difficult for children to understand how to go about things. And we know that do as I say, but don't do as I do, that doesn't work. It has never worked before, and it doesn't work in the digital world either. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you very much. We literally just passed by 30 seconds the hour, and we pride ourselves for being always on time, so, and respectful of people's time. So if I can just have a last round on each one of you, a bit on looking at the future, no? What would be, I mean, first your final message, but also what do you think it should be done in your own domain? So looking at Dave from an industry perspective, what would be the way forward? You mentioned age verification, for example, and then I'll, Arya, maybe to you, looking forward about, you know, the policy debate, what should be discussed. And again, I mean, I would say let's start with Dave, and then I'll moderate around.
Well, I think the good news is that age assurance and age verification technology has really advanced in the last few years, and that allows us to make sure that children are at the right age to use these platforms, which we're really keen to do. We use Yoti's age estimation technology, for example, for young people who are trying to change their age from under 18 to over 18, and 96% of young people use that technology, which is really interesting. So when young people are given the tools, they very often do the right thing. I think that's really key. I think two other things to say. We're now designing our products based on the UN CRC's best interest of the child framework. So our parental supervision tool requires the child and the parent to opt in to create a teachable moment. So that speaks to what Arja and Esther were talking about, to design products where there is that teachable moment. I think that's really important. And I think the other thing that we need to do, and I think is really important, is Europe is starting to see, is Brandon talked about earlier on, a lot of really encouraging child safety regulation in Europe from the Commission and from member states. We really welcome that, where we can establish some industry standards around age assurance, parental consent, and making sure that there are industry standards that people need to comply with if they're going to develop new apps or bring in new products and services, not just for parents, but particularly for young people.
Thank you very much. And Arya, just because I mentioned, what do you think, I mean, what would be your final message, and what do you think it's, you know, what would be the role of government in the next, I would say, coming, you know, couple of years to obviously better equip parents? I mean, that's...
Yeah, well, I think governments can do quite a lot of things. They provide the laws and the rules and regulations. They also provide the resources for parents, trainings, and for organizations like ours to work very often. So does the European Commission, financing projects and things like that. I think that's very, very crucial, and civil society organizations really have an important role here to bring people together and to develop trainings. As I said, I mean, we are into our fourth project in this area because it is such a fast-moving and fast-developing area. It's difficult for the single parent to stay up to date and to always know what is going on and what the newest apps are that young people are using or would like to use. Yeah, so I think it's important to have these organizations to help. I also welcome very much the finally that we have the Digital Services Act and other rules and regulations that will hopefully avoid things like we have seen when Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October, the feed that came into children's mobile phones on certain apps were pictures that normal television stations had decided not to show. Yeah? And I think we really need to hold these platforms accountable for what they are doing. Yeah? It's possible to check that, and there's no need that young people are exposed to this kind of content. Yeah? I know of people who, young people, but people of age, so where parents have no say any longer, that have opted out of these accounts because they said it's unsupportable. Yeah, and then we have young people who are still in there. So I think that this is a really important point, and that parents are looking forward to this cooperation with the legislation, with the platforms. As always, I think it's in cooperation that we can do this together. Nobody can save the world on his own or her own. So I think we really need to do this together and to create these safe spaces for ourselves, but also for our children, and in my case already for my grandchildren. So I'm really looking forward to the new things that are coming there. But I think we need to develop this together and make parents aware that if they install parental control tools on their child's device, they still need to have this conversation with their child. Yeah, it's so important because it's not only about respecting the child when you tell them what you're doing, but it's also if they find out and then they have access to the content on a elder siblings or on the neighbor's child's device. I mean, they need to know why you do this and what it can prevent.
Thank you very much. Esther, moving on to you, from a research point of view, what expertise do you believe will be crucial in the future to prepare parents, of course?
Yeah.
And guardians?
So research on media literacy and digital resilience, digital literacy, mainly focus on teens, on children in secondary schools. And we definitely need more insights on how to build more resilience in younger children, so already in primary schools. So from a prevention perspective, we need more insight on that. So what kind of skills do we have to train in those younger children, transferable skills that they can take with them when they enter more sides of the online world?
Thank you very much. Very, very to the point, and very much agreed also from our side. If I can, quickly speak on behalf of Think Young. And Chiara, I think as a young person, you definitely need to have a last word on all this. And what would you think, young influencer like you should do in the coming months and in the coming years, and looking at the future, what would you like to see more from other influencers like you happening when it comes to teenagers' experience online?
Yes, I think in general, the creator economy is changing, and what people are putting outside is changing, which I think is great. It's becoming more and more, like real and authentic, and less like edited and only showing the good sides. So I like that a lot. I see that a lot also in my colleagues, kind of like other influencers, that they are showing more of their personal thoughts, that they're showing more of their real life. And I think that's a great way to do it. And also, I think people in general are becoming more aware of what social media is doing to them. They are reflecting more. They are looking more, in general, that the conversation about mental health is a bigger one, is a good thing, I think. And yes, I think we will, progress a little bit more into this direction of showing not only the good sides, but showing everything around, and showing that influencers and everyone is just a normal person with normal problems. And yeah, also I think creators and influencers see their own influence on others more and are more aware of it. And I hope that a lot of people will think more about what they put outside, what lifestyle they show other people outside, what they are consuming, who they are teaming up with. I think that's very important. And I think that's the right direction we are moving into.
Thank you very much. I don't feel I need to add anything to these words of wisdom, and very happy it comes from a young person. Very happy you touched on authenticity and mental health, which are two big pillars of the campaign, the Our Feed, Our Future campaign we've been running since this summer, and we'll go on next year. This was the last webinar of the year, and I'm very happy we touched on a very, very important topic that many people ask us to do. So this was very much user generated somehow. It was not our decision to do on this topic. It was really many requests from parents asking us, and I can expect more will come next year. And on this note, thank you very much to all the speakers for the time that you dedicated to us and to build this. The webinar will be available on all our platforms. So if you're connected now and you miss a part of it, you'll be able to watch it later on. Thank you very much. And on the last note, I would say have a wonderful holiday time and see you in 2024. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.